If you watch Season 8 of American Idol, you will remember Scott MacIntyre and highlights from his journey being featured on that program. Well, now you can enjoy all the chapters, all the details, and photos to accompany the moving God story that is Scott's autobiography. By faith, not by sight. Well, I want to say, having read the book, that our perspectives on the challenges Scott has faced are clearly impaired by his glowing achievements. Scott, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
First and foremost, we are so proud of you.
Thank you. You know, last time I was here was just less than a year before American Idol. And I'm so glad I got to come back. Thanks for having me.
Do you know, one of the cool things, we talked about Idol, you and your mom and I out in the town square, yeah. And I sensed friends were pressuring, you were a little bit guarded.
I was a little bit hesitant about going on American Idol. A lot of people had said, you know, have you ever thought about American Idol? We'll vote for you, we'll watch you, you know, we'll cheer you on. And honestly, I never felt like it was an option for me because they didn't allow people to play instruments on the show. It was just singing and singing other people's songs, and then something happened the season before that season. They wheeled a grand piano out on stage for the first time, and that's, I think, the first time when it actually became a real possibility for me, and I started to soften a little bit, you know.
Because you're first and foremost a piano man, not the only instrument you play, by the way.
Yeah, and it's just an extension of my musicality, and I love to be able to make music with both the voice and the piano.
Speaking of piano, we also talked about David Foster, and you reminded me that I prayed with you that you would get to meet him.
You did, you know, and that's the amazing thing about this show. We prayed out in the lobby. I have met him a number of times now. I've actually met a lot of interesting people since Idol. I've done concerts with people like Michael W. Smith now, and Alice Cooper, and certainly David Foster, and just so many exciting things have happened.
Alice Cooper's a Christian, by the way.
Prayers. He is.
Still trying to wrap my head around that. Isn't that amazing?
You know, it was a Christmas show we did too, so I'm not really sure how the Alice Cooper and the Christmas were supposed to go together, but it was crazy. Snow was falling. I was singing a heavy metal version of "O Come All Ye Faithful." It was a good time.
Okay, Scott. I mean, you're a songwriter, multi-talented. I told you I had trouble tracking your academic success because you've been around the globe and homeschooled. It's just quite a combination. But you were a year and a half old before the doctors confirmed congenital blindness.
I was, yeah. You know, mothers just kind of have a way of knowing things, and I think my mom noticed pretty early on that I couldn't see what other kids saw, you know, but the doctors wouldn't believe her. They said, you know, have your husband take you to the mall, go out with your girlfriends, he's fine. And then after a year and a half, they finally agreed he is blind. And no one knew at that point how blind I was or where I fell on that scale. But what my vision is like is kind of looking through a little tiny coffee straw.
Now let's be clear, we're not talking about the soft drink straw.
No.
We're talking about like half this stir stick, the little tiny round.
Yeah, exactly. And the rest is not black, it's not blurred, it's just non-existent. So that little pinhole, that little straw view is my viewfinder to the world. And on stage, you know, on the American Idol stage, doing the dancing, doing the singing, it's not usable at all. So I didn't have my sight. I couldn't really hear a lot because the music was very loud, obviously. So it was literally kind of a physical lesson in trust, and trusting my memory and my instincts, and trusting that I wouldn't end up in the lap of the person in the first row, you know?
Well, I'm sure many, like me, those of us who knew your story and knew about your vision, held our breath. We were excited and nervous at the same time because you did the floor shows. Mm-hmm. You came out and did all those movements and changing of position on that platform.
Yeah, it was literally, you know, memorizing body angles and body positions. And they would tell me, after learning all the choreography, they would say, Scott, there's going to be a camera on this line of the verse swooping down from about this high, like that, and try to follow it with your eyes. You know, and it was just funny because I fool a lot of people into thinking I can see more than I can.
You caught Ryan Seacrest with the high five.
Yes, we did the high five. I won't go into that, but that was my that was my favorite moment of Idol. But you know, it was very interesting because I would not know people gesture with their hands when they talk. I would not know people look up at each other when they talk. Those were all behaviors that I had to learn growing up, and it's very interesting being in a visual field like the entertainment industry, especially on American Idol, being a blind person and having to live in that visual world.
There are so many chapters, and some that were not featured in your story, maybe the most dramatic. And typical of your story, it's a seesaw.
It is. I've felt like many times in my life I've been on the top of a mountain and in the bottom of the deepest valley at the exact same time. And sometimes that's when God works in our lives the most, is when we go through incredible trial. But in my case, I've been on the highest of highs, and then something has come to challenge me or to block my path. And I remember one of the biggest things, I never talked about this on American Idol, but at 19 years old, first of all, I was graduating from college. I graduated.
You were the Outstanding Graduate
I was the
Award.
Outstanding Graduate. I was a Marshall Scholar, Fulbright Scholar, and just honored to be receiving these awards. You know,
on
because
your way to Cambridge, England.
Yeah, because I, you know, there were always things I couldn't do being blind. I couldn't drive a car. I couldn't see when a girl was smiling at me. Couldn't play baseball, but I was really excelling in academics and in a lot of other areas. And so at 19, I was graduating. I gave the commencement speech to my college class and spoke about going out into the world and reaching for your dreams, not being afraid. And it was literally the best day of my life. And I finished that commencement speech and walked out into the parking lot where my dad was just getting off a cell phone call. And it was a cell phone call that changed my life forever. That was the moment, that was the day, graduation day at 19, that I found out my kidneys were failing. I had end-stage kidney failure, and my whole world changed in an instant. I didn't even know what kidney failure was. I remember going into the doctor the next day, and 5 words haunt me to this day. He said, "You need a kidney transplant." And I thought, you know, 19 years old, I thought this was something I wouldn't have to even think about until I was, you know, in my old age and a lot later in life. But life was just beginning, and now I had this major problem. I eventually became so sick I couldn't even play piano or sing in my own living room, and that really devastated me because I believed God had given me these gifts and talents to share with other people, you know? Just like you have gifts and talents, they're not meant for you, they're not meant for me, our gifts are meant to be shared with others, just like every one of you out there. And I couldn't do that all of a sudden. I thought, God, did I miss my calling? Did I misunderstand my calling? Are you done with me? Is this my entire life? Am I done?
And then, this 2 years before American Idol?
Yeah, and then I actually ended up on dialysis, which, you know, I had tubes in my chest. I had to be hooked up to a dialysis machine day after day after day. I couldn't tour, I couldn't travel, and I felt hopeless. But